Good morning, this is Chacham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights, and I'll do another live video. Enjoying this format very much. It is a good way to use my time when I'm on my way to work or sitting in traffic, and it's a good way and a good time to get some of my ideas and thoughts across. So we were talking about good versus evil, and I want to delve into it more. I may delve into it another times until it's kind of all off my chest, okay? Because sometimes you have thoughts and you need to just express until they come out in the correct way. So one of the things I notice, okay, I lived for many years in Israel. I'm now currently at the moment temporarily, as all Israelis like to say, back in New York. And one of the main reasons I left Israel is because I just was absolutely appalled at what I saw around me there, the way Jews treated each other, the way the government treated its own people, the lie that it's a democracy. Israel is not a democracy. Israel is, as I like to say, a military dictatorship, a tyrannical military dictatorship that poses as a democracy for the consumption of the Western world. So there's a lot of evil, sneakiness, deceit, people who think they're going to get away with things because they think that Yehovah is not watching. They think he doesn't care. They think that he's not going to give them recompense for good and for bad. And I saw a lot of good people who suffered, and still, kept the honest, good path in life. It says in the end of Kohelet, in the end of Ecclesiastes, the last verse in Ecclesiastes, it says that Yehovah, I'm paraphrasing, but Yehovah will pay everyone back, will pay you back for all your deeds, good and bad, both seen and unseen. Well, sometimes people forget that, especially people who have not come to have a personal relationship with the Creator. They forget that that Yehovah sees all, he's watching all, and he will choose his time and his place to recompense people, both for good and for bad, just as he did for Job, right? He chose his way to deal with Job, and when that way was questioned by Job's friends, then the response in the end of Yehovah in the parable, whether it's real or not, the response was, Hiya Shira Hiya, basically. I am who I am. I do what I do. Don't question me, because you don't understand the motivations, the motives for my actions, for my reasoning. And it's the same way. We see evil perpetuate all around us. We see evil people flourish. We see good people suffer horribly sometimes, and we look at the world and we say, my God, this is, what's going on here? This is just an upside down world. This is, as Israelis like to say, an olam hafuch, an overturned world. And it's very frustrating, but we have to have faith that Yehovah has his ways, that he knows what he's doing, and that eventually he will recompense bad and good, and he will give people time and time again chances to repent and to change their evil ways. But eventually, if they don't, then the guillotine comes down, the boom gets lowered eventually, right? Yehovah is erech hapayim, he's long suffering. Erech hapayim literally means, semi-literally means long suffering, means it takes a long time, it takes a lot to get him angry. He'll put up with a lot before he really gets angry and strikes out. And literally it means having a long nose, because the nose, I guess that's proof that God is Jewish, right? Has a long nose. At any rate, what it literally means is that in the Tanakh, the analogy of fire coming out of the nose, right? was the metaphor for anger. So when it says that Yehovah's Erech HaPayim has a long nose, it basically means it takes a long time before he snorts fire out of his mouth. So, but he has his ways of doing things. He has his reasons for doing things. The world we live in at the end of the day is just an illusion anyway. This physical world that we live in is nothing more than an illusion. The real world is the spiritual world. The illusory world is this physical world. But we're here, we're stuck in it when we wake up in the morning. I mean, sometimes when we disappear into sleep and we go into dreams, we go away from this world in our minds and our souls, and we go to a different world. And for those moments, we're kind of back in the real world, outside of this physical incarnation. But when we wake up in the morning, we're back in the real world. We wake up and it's like, oh, I kind of remember that dream, but very quickly you forget all of where you were during the night, and you're kind of back in this physical world. It's like, okay, I'm recentered back in the physical world, and that's what happens. When you go to sleep, sleep is kind of like death. I will quote the rabbis. I mean, I don't often quote the rabbis. Sometimes I do, but there is wisdom in what they have to say. There's also a lot of errors in my opinion, but there is wisdom, and they say that sleep is 1/60th of death, right? Sleep is like death. We lie down at night, we lie down at the end of our lives and die. At night when we sleep, the soul separates from the body, and each one goes back to its component, as it says as it mentions in Kohelet and Ecclesiastes. Who knows if the soul of man goes up to the heavens, and the soul of the beast goes down to the ground. So that again shows that there was this idea that the body goes to the ground and the soul returns back to its place up beyond the heavens, up in the stars, right, beyond the sphere of this physical earth. So that's what happens when we lie down at night. We have the separation of body and soul, which reunites in the morning, and this happens again and again every day throughout our lives. And then finally we lie down and the soul and the body separate out, and then they never come back again, and that's death, right? So when you die, it's kind of like sleep. In the Tanakh, one of the phrases used for a person dying, it's actually used in the Nach portion of the Tanakh, meaning not the Torah, not the 5 books of Moses, but the later portion of the Tanakh. It says when such and such king died, he slept with his fathers. Vishani Mavutav. Okay? Hold on a second. Go over to an exit here. So again, there's this analogy between death and sleep. If you study near-death experiences, which I was in a phase where I was studying them extensively, then you will see that a lot of what I've mentioned here is in line with what people report when they have near-death experiences. For instance, one of the things that people have near-death experiences often report is that when they were in the world of outside, they were outside their bodies. They actually a lot of times will see their physical bodies from some perspective, like the ceiling of the hospital room, etc., etc. And then they're outside of their physical bodies, and they're in some other place, often with some kind of guide or some kind of guide that is kind of introducing them to what lies beyond. And one of the things that they'll report when they come back, because all people have a near-death experience come back, right? If they didn't come back, it would be a death experience, unless they stayed in a coma or something like that. One of the things they'll report is that when they were dead, that the spiritual world they were in, they realized that was the real world. That was the real world, and that this physical world is the fake world. And they actually wanted to stay. They said they'd never felt such love and such peace, and there was something drawing them to stay in that world of love and peace, where suffering and pain are absent, where evil is absent, etc., etc. But then suddenly they remembered something like, oh, my son needs my help. What is my family going to do if I don't come back? And they forced themselves back down. They almost like jammed themselves back from 1,000 or 1,000,000 or infinite dimensions back down into their 3-dimensional bodies, and then they woke up as if one wakes up after sleep. Except a lot of them will report that they My connection is weak. Okay, I hope this is broadcasting. A lot of them will report at that point that that it did not feel like a dream, that it actually felt more real than the life they woke up into. So this physical world that we live in now for 70 years, for 80 years, for 90 years, this world of space and time is illusory. It's an illusion. It is basically, I'll quote the Matrix, it is a projection of our, I can't remember exactly, it says, I'll paraphrase the Matrix, a projection of our inner self, of our inner identity, right? This world is a projection of the consciousness and the spirit of humanity and Yoah. And the reason it's such hell, a lot of times, is because the spiritual state of humanity is hell. There's a lot of evil. So that spiritual state reflects itself in the hell on earth. Disease, death, injury, violence, poverty, oppression, slavery, on and on and on. Okay? This is not some kind of mysticism. This is obvious, right? If you get a bunch of 10 really spiritual good people who are loyal to Yehovah, people who have faith in Yehovah, if you get them together and they spend, form a community, or if they even spend a day together, then you're going to have some very positive interactions right in that physical immediate area around them, right? There'll be a lot of sharing, there'll be a lot of loving, there'll be a lot of hugs, there'll be a lot of kisses, there'll be a lot of acceptance and non-judgment, or sticking to a certain set of ineffable rules. And if you get a bunch of psychopaths and criminals together, right? Just think about it. If you get 10 criminals and psychopaths together and put them in a community, or put them together for a day, then you're not going to have very nice interactions there. There's going to be a lot of deceit and lying and stealing and perhaps violence, and you'll be sitting around plotting against each other. It's not going to be very pleasant. So the physical world we live in is a reflection of the physical world we live in is a reflection of that spiritual reality. And the reason that the physical world is hell is because our spiritual essence is not good. And the more evil the world is, the more it is a reflection of that evil spiritual essence. And there are certain generations which became so evil, like the Dora Mabul, the generation of the flood, which became so evil that the hell on earth was so great that the cry went up to heaven, and then Yehovah decided to take action in the case of the generation of the flood, to destroy all of humanity. When the cry of Sodom and Amorah went up to heaven, and Sodom and Gomorrah, then he decided to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's kind of an overview of how good and evil work in this world. When will this world become heaven? When will this world become the Garden of Eden? When humanity as a whole, or whoever's left in it, because Yehovah's not just going to sit around and let everyone be bad to each other. So there will be a remnant. There will be those who, I believe, will come back and live on this earth in its perfected state. Those who have earned it through being good people throughout their lives, through not ever giving in to being a bad person. I mean, we all sin, as King Solomon says when he dedicates the first temple, but who have overall, perfected themselves again and again through trials and tribulations, through working on their character over their lives, to be basically good people. Those are the people that will inherit the earth, right? I'll quote the New Testament on that again. There's wisdom even in the New Testament. There's a lot of wisdom in the New Testament. Even though I am not a Christian, have never been a Christian, will never be a Christian, but it says the meek shall inherit the earth, and I think that's what it says. The meek shall inherit the earth. Whoa! I had to slam on the brakes there for a second. That's what happens when you're paying attention to the video instead of to the road. So there's a proverb which says, what is that proverb? I can't remember it. Well, I'll make up my own proverb. The meek shall inherit the earth, and the evil people shall inherit the wind. I think I'm combining one quote from the New Testament and one quote from Proverbs, but hey, I don't have a chapter and verse in front of me right now. At any rate, so that is kind of an anatomy of how evil works in this world. Now, I want to talk about how evil the world is right now, both in Israel, both in the United States of America. Evil manifests itself in so many different ways that we wake up in the morning and we have this kind of like feeling around us that we're surrounded by tension, we're surrounded by evil. I happen to be in a place right now called New York City, which to me is in many ways is the concentration of evil. It is. I often write in my posts that New York City is the modern day Sodom and Gomorrah, and I really believe it is, and I really believe that unless the city changes its ways, it will be destroyed. I believe that 9/11 was a warning, and the city now has a chance to repent. The country has a chance to repent, and if it doesn't, both this country and New York City will completely be decimated by its enemies: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, who knows what else will, sink their teeth into the United States. I think Trump realizes that as well. I'm not going to get into politics, and that was what he campaigned on, that this nation is basically doomed unless there's some major changes here. And he actually said that explicitly a bunch of times. He said, unless something changes, then there won't be a United States of America for you to come elect me in another 4 years or something like that. And I think he's actually right. I think if Hillary had gotten into office, that would have been finito for this country. But I guess for some reason Yehovah had some kind of mercy on the United States of America and basically led Trump by the hand right through all of the, through the valley of the shadow of death, through the parting waters of the Dead Sea, if we can be dramatic, and led him right through all his enemies straight to the leadership. And we'll see what he does with it. We'll see what the nation does with it. I think that the nation is under judgment right now, but if it, maybe it can mend its ways. If not, it will go the way of Rome and Greece. At any rate, so getting back to evil, so we see especially in a place like New York City, where there's so much tension, where there's so much just a sense of tension. I go just about to any other place in the world, and I don't feel the same tension that I do here in this place. I don't like this place at all. I don't like the city at all. A lot of times I'll hear on the radio or the TV, not that I listen to a lot of radio or TV, almost never, but they'll say the greatest city in the world, and I think to myself, the greatest city in the world, this is a shithole. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. This is hell on earth. Are there nice people? Yeah, there's some nice people. Are there some nice places? Yeah, a little bit here and there. I mean, but basically it's a crowded bunch of 16 million people living on top of each other like rats, all in tension with each other, all the different races hating each other, all the different groups hating each other, and it's never going to change. It's not going to change, right? Until all of humanity wakes up to some greater spiritual reality. At any rate, so the evil that we see around us manifests itself in so many ways. Yesterday I gave the example of speaking on, or people writing on Facebook when they're protected, right? I think they call them keyboard warriors or keyboard cowboys. When they're protected behind the keyboard, they can be very, very, brave, and they can also be very, very nasty to each other. And this is a topic that I've spoken a lot with a good friend of mine who doesn't like to be mentioned, so I mentioned him, but he's out in California, and he knows who he is if he ever listens to the video, about how nasty people can be when they communicate with each other over the facade of the internet, and especially over a place like Facebook. But there are other ways, right? You look at, for instance, there's so many ways. We just have a nasty society. The society is nasty in Israel, in America, and I don't know, in many other places around the world, I suppose there's a lot of nastiness, but certainly there is here. And I'm sorry to say, but I think that America learned a lot of its nastiness from the Jews, from my own people who are rebellious, and then they come and teach the other nations their evil ways. I guess the Jews will never learn. I guess pogroms, expulsions, and even Holocaust are not able to knock sense into the head of this thick and stubborn people. But at any rate, I'm digressing again, because the main point I want to make is look at all the ways that evil perpetuates around us, and how sickening it is, and how for the good people it gnaws away at us, and if we didn't have some kind of faith in Yehovah, faith in the Creator, it would really maybe completely knock us over, completely destroy us. But I'll give an example of the newspapers, right? The newspapers, and again, it gets back to the sneakiness of people pretending pretending to be good and righteous. Oh, we're just, reporting the news. People have a right to know. But the news and journalism is often used to hurt people, to destroy people, and they enjoy doing it. There's just a sadistic kind of like mob kind of mob warfare or mob beatdown that goes on in a lot of these places, right? It's just so nasty when you get out into the public eye, whether you're a politician or a celebrity or anyone that is in the public eye. And I'll give the example of Anthony Weiner. Okay, I actually never thought much of the guy because he was a liberal basically, and I'm not a liberal. But I went and saw the movie Weiner, which was designed to kind of make fun of him, and I actually gained a lot of respect for the guy. I think he's a very straightforward and I really got the impression he was just kind of a good guy. I may disagree with him in a lot of policies, but let's take now his latest sexting scandal, right? Which is publicized all over the place, or not even the latest one, because that's too sensitive. That's talking about an underage girl. Let's take some of the other ones, right, where his private messages were published in the newspapers, okay? And if one were to come back and say, well, that's wrong, these were private messages, the journalism should have some restraint on itself and not publish other people's private messages, they would come back and say, well, this is a public figure and the public has a right to know, and this was over a non-encrypted server, or whatever excuses they would come up with. But the real desire there is voyeurism, is gossip, and is to destroy another human being. And I really think that's disgusting. That is an example of the perpetuation of evil all around us. The same happens in Israel, right? People are ripped apart by the press. People are ripped apart by newspapers. People are ripped apart by the press here. And you have to have a really thick skin, like a Donald Trump or like a Rabbi Kahana, to not be affected by it. And but we live in a very nasty world. I will give more examples of the nastiness of the world. The other example I gave yesterday, and I'll return to this, is the way that laws are used, and especially the ways that the police are used, right, under the guise of being fair and under the guise of being just. I'll give the example of traffic tickets, right? Under the guise of, we need to keep roads safe, what is really going on is that the government, through the police, who are willing participants because they love the feeling of power, they love the ego trip, they are basically stealing money out of citizens' pockets. I mean, what's the average, traffic stop? Some guy going 10 miles an hour fast in a road that's empty anyway, and nobody's around there, and he's on his way home from work, and he's had a long day at work, and all he wants to do is get home, and then some filthy cop pulls him over and makes him pay now $300, $400, $500, whatever the ticket may be, and this is all done in the name of justice. It's not justice. That's just a clever lie that's sold to the public, that there's some kind of road safety or some kind of justice going on here. What it is all of the worst lusts, all of the worst, what's the word I'm thinking of? Ta'avot, translate that into English, lustful desires that are spoken about in the Torah. The desire to steal, right? You're stealing someone's money. The desire to dominate and control, right? We spoke about that yesterday, right? The desire to feel ego, to feel power, the desire to hurt another person, the desire to use violence and be in control of a situation, right? That's the anatomy of what's really going on. So when I get stopped by cops, I always have a lot to say to them. I don't just say yes sir, no sir. I'll say things. Let's put it that way. At any rate, that's what's going on. It's a perpetuation of the evil of this society, and no place is a better place to see the evil of humanity than in New York City. New York City is the modern Sodom and Gomorrah. It is a Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's why it's always associated, along with the other cities of the United States and big cities in general, it's always associated with liberalism. It's always associated with multiculturalism. It's always associated with globalism, because it is the source of and the evil in the world. It is not the greatest city in the world. It is hell on earth. It is Sodom and Gomorrah, and everywhere you go, you see the same lusts: the lust after money, the lust after power, the lust after fame, the lust after control. When you come to New York City, if you come from a place where, I don't know, you're out in open country, you'll feel like you've walked into a prison camp. You'll feel like you've walked into a prison camp. And I'm not necessarily picking on New York City. I consider it the epitome of everything that has gone wrong on planet Earth, because it is the leading city of what is still the leading country, at least for a little while longer, on this planet. But it is where evil is concentrated, and so you see the worst elements of what makes this world a bad place come out in these very many different forms. Okay, I'm at my destination, so I have to get going now. I'll continue this, and again, this may be a number of more times before I kind of get all of the thoughts out that I want to get out. But I hope you're enjoying this series on good and evil. This has been Chacham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights, and please visit our website at www.qaraiteinsights.com. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and of course on Facebook.